In the last video, we explored the 6 principles. They help us recognize what kind of thinking a conversation needs. But that leaves an important question. How do we know whether those principles are showing up in your governance? How would you recognize them if they were or if they weren't? And that's where standards come in. Take Inform as an example. We said that Inform isn't really about sending information, it's about reducing uncertainty, helping the board understand where it is, why it matters, what belongs to the board only, and what judgment is being asked of them to make. But if that's true, what would we expect to see in the work of the board? And that's the purpose of a standard. A standard describes what effective governance looks like when a principle is consistently present. It's not just an idea, it becomes something that you can observe. Notice what has changed. The principle tells us how to think. The standard tells us what the thinking looks like in practice. It becomes a shared description of quality. Imagine 2 trustees watching the same meeting. One might say, "I thought that was an excellent discussion," whereas another might quietly disagree. Who's right? Perhaps both, because they're both using different pictures of what good governance looks like. And standards gives the board a common reference point, not to judge one another, but to examine the work. And that matters because the quality of governance is surprisingly difficult to see. Sure, you can count meetings, you can record attendance, you can minute decisions, but those things tell you very little about the quality of governance itself. And the standards begin to make that invisible work visible. And once something becomes visible, you can begin to notice patterns. Imagine looking back over 12 months of the last year's board agendas, not simply asking how many meetings did we have, but asking what kinds of governance we've actually been practicing. Where are we spending most of our time on financial oversight, on strategic direction, on educational quality, on risk or culture or stakeholder relationships? Where's our collective attention really been during these meetings? And that's one reason standards become so useful. They aren't just a way of describing good governance, they become a way of reviewing it. Instead of waiting until the annual board evaluation, you begin building evidence continually. Every agenda, every meeting, every discussion, one small piece at a time. Governance becomes something that you can understand while it's happening, not only after it's finished. And of course, for schools using Loom, much of this can happen automatically. Agenda items can be linked to standards, and over time the board begins to see its own patterns. Not as a compliance exercise, but as feedback. Where's our attention naturally going? What responsibilities have we neglected? Where are we consistently strong? But you don't need specialist software to benefit. Even a simple board agenda can be annotated by hand. A chair or governance professional might simply note which standard each agenda item is addressing. And over time, those notes can begin to tell a story. Perhaps the greatest value of the standards is that they widen the board's field of view. Many boards naturally gravitate towards finance, budgets, audit, risk. Important work, but not the whole picture. The standards act as a visual reminder that governance has a broader responsibility. Educational quality, strategy, culture, leadership, community, stewardship, and future direction. They gently ask, what haven't we looked at recently? They're not another checklist or compliance framework. They're a shared description of effective governance and a practical way to keep the whole landscape of governance in view.